Hello, welcome to today's edition of Daf Yomi, Bekhorot Daf 33b. Let's dive straight in. The Gemara suggests, but if so, let Rav Chisda establish the entire Bryson according to the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon. The Gemara answers, perhaps Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, says that the sanctity of a slaughtered blemish offering is retained only there. With regard to other disqualified consecrated animals, because the level of sanctity is strong enough to transfer the sanctity to their redemption money. With regard to blemish firstborn offering, whose level of sanctity is not strong enough to transfer it to redemption money, perhaps the sanctity is not retained, and therefore one may skin the hide from its feet. The Gemara asks, but doesn't Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, agree with the ruling in Mishnah 31a that all disqualified consecrated animals are sold in a butcher's market and weighed and sold by the litra in the manner of non-sacred meat? Certainly he agreed with the halacha. Evidently, since there is a benefit that accrues to temple treasury, the Tana of the Mishnah deemed this permitted. As it was taught in 31b, the meat of disqualified consecrated animals may be treated in this manner despite the fact that it retains a measure of sanctity. The reason is that if the owner knows that it's permitted for him to perform this more lucrative action, he's likely to spend more money to redeem the animal in the first place, which benefits the temple treasury. By the same logic, why doesn't Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, permit the more lucrative action of skinning the animal from its feet? The Gemara cites several resolutions. Rav Mari, son of Rav Kahana, says that the benefit gained to the hide by skinning it whole is offset by the detriment caused to the flesh. So what does that mean? Kol ha-shem mashbiach ba'or pagam babasa. According to Rashi, a portion of the flesh is severed while skinning the hide whole. This results in a depreciation of the animal's value, and no monetary gain accrues to the temple treasury. See Avodah Zorah 49a. Others explain that even if the temple treasury gains a profit, nevertheless skinning the hide whole is prohibited, as the severance of the flesh, which is an inevitable effect of the process, is considered degradation to consecrated animals. See Rabbeinu Gershom Mohagola. Part of the animal's flesh is severed from the carcass during the skinning process, thereby lowering its value. In the West Eretz Yisrael, they say in the name of Ravina that skinning a disqualified consecrated animal from its feet is prohibited because it appears as though he's performing work with sacrificial animals, which is prohibited. So what's the footnote? Nera ka'over avodah kadoshim. Rashi maintains that this is referring back to the beginning of the Gemara's discussion on 33a about skinning the animal. See also Jerusalem Talmud Beitza 3.6. If so, the prohibition against skinning the hide of a disqualified consecrated animal fits the opinion of both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Others indicate that the reasoning method in the Gemara here applies only to the opinion of Beis Shammai, which according to the opinion of Beis Hillel, no prohibition exists, and that's in the Rambam. Rabbi Yossi Bar Avin says that this prohibition is a rabbinic decree, lest one may retain the disqualified consecrated animals in his possession while waiting for a consumer to purchase the hides, and in the meantime raise many herds of disqualified animals from them. In such a case, he may shear or work the animals in a prohibited manner. With regard to a firstborn animal that was congested with excess blood, so what does that mean? One who lets the excess blood of a firstborn animal for medical purposes, provided he has no intention of causing a blemish. If, however, one did cause a blemish, the animal may be slaughtered on its account. This is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon cited in the Braita, following Shmuel's ruling on the next Amud. The Rosh cited by both the Torah and the Tats maintains that the animal may not be slaughtered on account of that particular blemish, and according to the opinion of the rabbis, and that's the Rambam Sefer Korbanot Hilchot Bekhorot 2:13, Shulchan Aruch Yoreh 3:13:6. Even if the animal will die, if one does not let the excess blood, one may not let its blood. Ein mezikin lo dam, one may not let its blood. And there's a picture here, if you understand, so it's on page 212, of a medieval Persian bowl with a bloodletting scene. Bloodletting involves drawing small quantities of blood. It was practiced both as a cure and as a preventative treatment that promotes good health. Bloodletting was based on the ancient medical belief that an equilibrium of blood and other bodily fluids, known as humus, was essential to maintain an individual's health. It was the most common medical procedure performed on both humans and animals for almost 2 millennia. From antiquity through to the end of the 19th century to date, it is medically established that bloodletting is not an effective treatment for most diseases. The only condition still treated with bloodletting is polycythemia vera, a disease in which the body produces excessive red blood cells. Among the symptoms of this condition are bleeding gums, excessive bleeding from ordinary cuts and bruises, and skin with a reddish tinge. It is possible that the mission is referring to this condition, as this might cause a blemish, and it is prohibited to cause a blemish on consecrated animals. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda, and the rabbis say, one may let the blood, provided that he will not cause a blemish while doing so, and if he cause a blemish, the animal may not be slaughtered on account of that blemish. Since he was the cause of the blemish, he may not slaughter the animal until it develops a different unrelated blemish. Rabbi Shimon says, one may let the blood even if he thereby causes a blemish in the animal. Gemara. So he's talking about with regard to a firstborn animal that was congested with excess blood, and which can be healed only through bloodletting, one may let the animal's blood by cutting in a place where the incision does not cause a permanent blemish. But one may not let the animal's blood by cutting in a place where the incision causes a permanent blemish, as it is prohibited to intentionally cause a blemish in the firstborn animal. This is a statement of Rabbi Meir. And the rabbis say one may even let the animal's blood by cutting in a place where the incision causes a permanent blemish, provided that he does not slaughter the animal on the basis of that blemish, even though in general a firstborn animal may be slaughtered once it develops any permanent blemish. Rabbi Shimon says the animal may be slaughtered on the basis of that blemish. So as a footnote, Ein Nishchat El Ose Hamum. Two explanations are offered for Rabbi Shimon's opinion. Some say that this ruling accords with Rabbi Shimon's principle that a permitted action from which an unintended prohibition result ensues is permitted. Here too, since the one performing the bloodletting seeks to heal the animal, his action is permitted. Consequently, once it is blemished, he may slaughter either first and Rashi. According to this explanation, Rabbi Shimon's lenient ruling applies only in a case where he did not intend to cause a blemish and slaughter it, but if he had that result in mind, even Rabbi Shimon considers that the act is prohibited and he may not slaughter it. Furthermore, if the blemish is an inevitable consequence of the bloodletting, Rabbi Shimon agrees that it's prohibited. As a principle that a permitted action from which an unintended prohibited result ensues is permitted does not apply to an inevitable consequence of one's act. Others maintain that Rabbi Shimon deems it permitted for one to let the blood of a firstborn, even if he intends to cause a blemish, so that he will be able to slaughter it. According to this opinion, Rabbi Shimon's lenient ruling is not connected to his opinion concerning a permitted action from which an unintended prohibited result ensues. Well, his reasoning is that since there is no way of healing this animal other than by letting its blood, and incidentally causing a blemish, is analogous to one who caused a blemish in an already blemished animal. That's for the Rosh on Bekhorot 32b. If so, Rabbi Shimon's ruling applies even if he intends to cause a blemish, but only when the sole way to heal the firstborn is through the bloodletting that will result in a blemish. If it is possible to avoid causing a blemish, Rabbi Shimon agrees that one must act accordingly, and that's from the Tosfot. Just finding where I'm up to. Rabbi Yehuda says, even if the firstborn will die if its blood is not let, one may not let its blood at all. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is explained in Pesachim 11a to b. Rabbi Yehuda agrees with Rabbi Meir that one may not let the blood of a firstborn in a place where it will cause a blemish. His opinion is even more stringent than Rabbi Meir's. So Rabbi Yehuda rules that bloodletting may not be performed even where it will not cause a blemish, and even if the animal will die without bloodletting. The reason is that since one is alarmed about the potential loss of his property, if he is permitted to let blood in a spot where it will not cause a blemish, he is apt to do so in a place where it will cause a blemish. By contrast, the rabbis contend that the consideration that people are alarmed about their property leads to the opposite conclusion. The one should be allowed to let the animal's blood if it will not lead to a blemish. They claim that if the halacha does not permit this individual to act at all, he will proceed to let the animal's blood even in a prohibited manner. Gemara relates, Rabbi Elazar taught his son, and some say it was Rabbi Chia who taught his son. Just as there is a dispute here in the Braita with regard to bloodletting, so there is a dispute in the Mishnah with regard to the bowel of teruma. As we learn in Teruma 8.8, in the case of a bowel of teruma oil, Chavish shel teruma, in the case of a bowel containing teruma, with regard to which uncertainty developed concerning the state of its ritual impurity, one may not touch the bowel, nor may it be moved or uncovered. Rather, it must be left untouched until its contents definitely contract ritual impurity, at which point the contents are burned. There is no concern that one may inadvertently eat some of the contents if the bowel is left untouched. The halacha is according to the opinion of Rabbi Gamliel, Rambam Sefer Zevayim Hilchot Terumah 12:3, with regard to which uncertainty developed concerning its status of rich impurity, and which therefore may not be eaten. Rabbi Elazar says that one must nevertheless safeguard terumah from impurity. Therefore, if the bowel was resting in a vulnerable location where it might come into contact with impurity, one should place it in a concealed location, and if it was exposed, he should cover it. Rabbi Yeshua says that is not necessary. Rather, if it was placed in a concealed location, one may place it in a vulnerable location. If it was covered, he may expose it, as he need no longer safeguard this terumah from the impurity. Rabbi Gamliel says one should do nothing new with it, i.e. he should leave the bowel as it is. The Gemara clarifies, Rabbi Meir, who deemed it prohibited to let the firstborn offering blood in the Gemara clarifies, Rabbi Meir, who deemed it permitted to let the firstborn offering blood provided that one does not cause a blemish, holds according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, who deemed it prohibited to place the bowel in an exposed location lest it become ritually impure, which is equivalent to a blemish. And the rabbis who deem bloodletting permitted, even if it will cause a blemish, hold in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua, who rules that the content of the bowel may be exposed to ritual impurity, and Rabbi Yehuda, who says that bloodletting is not permitted under any circumstance, holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Gamliel, who rules that the bowel should be left as it is and not be handled at all. The Gemara rejects this suggestion. From where can one prove that these comparisons are accurate? Perhaps Rabbi Meir states his opinion that one may not let blood in a place where it will cause a blemish, only there, as it is caused the blemish by direct action. But here in the case of the bowel, where rich impurity results from an indirect action, perhaps he holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. And furthermore, perhaps Rabbi Elazar states his opinion that the bowel should be protected only here, because perhaps Elijah will come. So what does that mean? Shema Yavor Eliyahu. The idea that Elijah will come is a standard concept found in the Talmud that is important for determining uncertain matters in the case of halacha. It originates in the book of Ezra, where an uncertainty is left unresolved until there stood up a priest with the Urim V'Tumim in Ezra 2:63. Elijah will not come to establish new halacha, since it is not permitted for a prophet to legislate law or even resolve halachic dilemmas, but to resolve, utilize his prophetic powers, uncertainties that arise due to the lack of sufficient evidence to fully resolve the question, and deem it ritually pure. But there, with regard to the firstborn offering, where if one leaves the animal, it will certainly die, perhaps he holds according to the opinion of the rabbis that bloodletting is permitted in order to prevent the animal's death. And likewise, perhaps the rabbis state their opinion only here with regard to the firstborn offering, as if one leaves it, the animal will certainly die. But there, in the case of the bowel of terumah, perhaps they accept the claim that one must safeguard the terumah, because perhaps Elijah will come down and deem it ritually pure, which would mean that they hold in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. It can also be asserted that Rabbi Yehuda states his opinion that bloodletting is prohibited in all circumstances, only here with regard to the firstborn offering, as the individual is causing a blemish by direct action. But there, in the case of the bowel, where the ritual impurity results from an indirect action, perhaps he holds according to the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. And perhaps Rabbi Gamliel states his opinion that the bowel should not be moved at all, only there because perhaps Elijah will come and deem it ritually pure. But here, with regard to the firstborn offering, where one leaves it, it will certainly die. It is possible that he holds according to the opinion of the rabbis, and furthermore, one can draw parallels between the opinions of the two sources. As here, the Tanaim disagree with regard to the exposition of certain verses, and then they disagree with regard to the exposition of certain other verses. Rabbi Chir Bar Abba says that Rabbi Yochanan says all the sages who disagree as to whether one may let the blood of the firstborn animal concede that one who leavens a meal offering after another had already leavened. It's also a footnote, mechomes acha mechomes. All meal offerings brought to the altar are unleavened. Likewise, the remainder of the meal offering eaten by the priest may be eaten only unleavened. If one leavened the remainders, he is liable to receive lashes. One who leavens a meal offering that has already been leavened is also liable. In addition, one is liable for any action of leavening. Therefore, if one kneaded, shaped, patterned, or baked a meal offering into a leavened product, he is liable on account of each action. This ruling is based on the verses: "It shall not be made with leaven," Leviticus 2:11, and "It shall not be baked with leaven," Leviticus 6:10, from which it is derived that there is a separate transgression for each action pertaining to leavening. And that's in the Rambam Sefer Vodi Hilchot Maaseh Carbonot 12:14-15. And it is liable to receive lashes for the additional leavening, as it is written, "It should not be baked with leaven," Leviticus 6:10. And it is also stated, "No meat offering that you sacrifice to God shall be made with leaven," Leviticus 2:11. This indicates that one is liable for every act of leavening performed on a meal offering. Similarly, everyone agrees that one who castrates an animal after one who has already castrated it is liable. So what's the phoneme? Mesaves, acha mesaves. Is able to remove or destroy the male reproductive organs of a human being, an animal, or a bird. By Torah, one who performs castration is liable to receive lashes. The prohibition against, even if one only adds to the castration of a male who has already been castrated. Therefore, if one severed a person's member and another cut off or removed the testicles from the scrotum, and yet another cut the spermatic cord, or if one crushed a person's member and another detached it, and yet another severed it, they're all liable to receive lashes. The same applies to an animal. As the Rambam says, Kedusha Hilchot Yisuri Be'er 16:10-11, Shulchan Aruch Even Ezra 5:11. As this is written, those whose testicles are bruised or crushed or detached or cut shall not be offered to the Lord, and you shall not do this in your land. In Leviticus 22:24. If one is liable when the seminal vesicles are cut, then when the testicles are detached, Koves, no say, cut, detached. Various explanations are suggested for these terms, which refer to very small injuries to the testicles. Some say that cutting refers to the severing of the testicles from the attachment to the spermatic cords, whereas detaching is the removal of the testicles from the scrotum, see Rashi. Alternatively, both actions involve the severing of the spermatic cords, and the difference lies in the manner of their performance. Cutting is performed with an implement, while detaching is performed by hand, Rashi on 39b. Others explain that cutting refers to one who severs the scrotum but leaves the testicles hanging, and detaching refers to one who removes the testicles themselves. And that's from Rabbeinu Gershom Margolis, see 39b. Again, then is he not all the more liable? Rather, the verse serves to include one who detaches the testicles after one who cuts the seminal vesicles to indicate that he is liable. Apparently, one is liable for castrating an animal that is already sterilized. These sages disagree with regard to one who causes a blemish in an already blemished animal. So what's the footnote? Mitamum bava'amum. By Torah, it's permitted to cause a permanent blemish in a firstborn offering that has a temporary blemish, according to the opinion of the rabbis in the Bible, says Rosh. This is prohibited by rabbinic law. Some suggest that according to the Rambam, the permission to cause a blemish applies only to an animal that already has a permanent blemish, whereas one who causes a blemish in an animal that has a temporary blemish is liable to receive lashes. See Maharit Al-Ghazi and Chazon Ish. Rambam Sefer Vodi Hilchot Maaseh Carbonot 1:8, Shulchan Aruch Yodeah 313:5. Such as one whose blood circulation is constricted, as Rabbi Meir maintains that as the verse states, "It shall be perfect to be accepted, there shall be no blemish in it," Leviticus 22:21. This categorical statement includes even the causing of a blemish in an offering that is already blemished. And the rabbis maintain that the phrase "it shall be perfect to be accepted" indicates that the prohibition against causing a blemish applies only to an animal that is currently perfect, i.e. unblemished, and can therefore be accepted, i.e. it is fit to be sacrificed upon the altar. If the animal is already blemished, there is no prohibition against causing an additional blemish to it. The Gemara asks, and what does he do with this phrase, "it should be perfect to be accepted"? The Gemara answers that verse serves to exclude only an animal that was blemished from the outset, an animal that was born with a blemish. In such a case, there is no prohibition against causing an additional blemish in it. But if the animal was initially unblemished and later developed a blemish, it is permitted to cause another blemish in it. The Gemara rejects this suggestion. There is no need to exclude an animal that was blemished from the outset, and this is merely like a palm tree, i.e. it can never attain the stage of an animal consecrated to an offering. Therefore, it is obvious that the prohibition against causing a blemish does not apply to this animal. Rather, Rabbi Meir maintains that the phrase "it should be perfect to be accepted" serves to exclude disqualified consecrated animals, to teach that after their redemption, when they become non-sacred, the prohibition against causing a blemish does not apply to them any longer. This exclusion is necessary, as it might enter your mind to say that since even after they've been redeemed and are non-sacred, just as it is prohibited to shear these animals or use them for labor, perhaps let it also be prohibited to cause a blemish upon them. Consequently, this verse teaches that there is no prohibition against causing a blemish of these animals. The Gemara asks, and as for the rabbis as well, who derive their opinion from the verse, "It shall be perfect to be accepted," isn't it written, "There shall not be any blemish in it," which indicates an expansion of the prohibition against causing a blemish upon an offering? The Gemara answers, that verse comes to teach that the prohibition against causing a blemish extends also to a blemish caused as a result of an indirect action. As is taught in the Bible, the verse states, "There should be no blemish in Leviticus 22:21. From here I have derived, we'll just finish off from the beginning of the next Omen. Only prohibition one may not directly cause a blemish. Thank you for listening, and I wish you all the best. Take care, bye.